kind of a weird term to secure the border. Doesn't seem like a lot of that's happening. Hello and welcome. I'm John Bachman.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bianca Della Garza. Great to have you in with us this Friday. Now, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, as you know, John, authorized its agents to catch and release migrants without court dates. But that move was then blocked by a federal judge in Florida. We are expecting an appeal, however, of that decision from the Biden administration.
And some asylum seekers, according to reports, are being given court dates as much as a decade away from now, and they are heading to places like New York, Chicago, and Florida. Backlogs at immigration courts currently stand at over 2 million cases. In a statement yesterday, Customs and Border Patrol admitted, quote, Border Patrol is not resourced to manage the level of encounters currently occurring across the southwest border. President Biden also acknowledged earlier this week that it would be chaos, and they tried to walk it back. Now, the American Civil Liberties Union has also filed legal challenge to the Biden administration's new asylum bans, claiming they violate U.S. laws and international agreements. President Biden has tried to implement new restrictions issued at the last minute that are very similar to restrictions put in place by Donald Trump. Now, the ACLU successfully blocked those Trump rules in court, and they're now asking the same California-based judge to block these Biden restrictions as well. Let's head out to our border correspondent, Chuck Holton. He joins us live now from El Paso, Texas, with the latest on the ground there. Hey, Chuck.
That's right, John. Aside from the humanitarian chaos and the legal chaos, we have political chaos taking place as H.R. 2 was passed by House Republicans yesterday, which provides more border wall funding to complete the border wall. But Karine Jean-Pierre said in a recent statement that the president would veto that. Take a listen to what she had to say, and then look at what we found yesterday out on the U.S. southern border.
It would waste taxpayer dollars on an ineffective wall, again, an ineffective wall that can't even withstand heavy winds, let alone sophisticated criminal smuggling networks. If the president were presented with H.R. 2, he would veto it.
This hastily erected section of border fence is very busy at night because of these holes you see here. And this isn't part of the border fence that was not completed under the Trump administration because he was blocked from doing so. And they left all these construction materials just laying around in the desert for the last couple of years. But now the Biden administration is hurriedly and hastily trying to complete parts of this fence because of the massive wave of migration that has been caused by the Biden policies.
So it's obvious, John, that the administration is worried about the chaos of all these people planning to come across. And the workers that we talked to out there said it was pretty ironic. They were the same ones who were building the wall under Donald Trump. They got fired by Joe Biden when he came to office, but now they're back working again for the Biden administration.
The absurdity, Chuck, of watching that video, you standing there as they start to build this border wall at the last minute. They could have been doing this for the last 2.5 years. But they decided to wait. Chuck Holton for us live down on the border. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
In a newly released memo, CBP Chief Raul Ortiz is saying that the catch and release of migrants will be allowed if the Border Patrol is averaging more than 7,000 arrests a day, and they expect to see that. In fact, the agency is well above that level already. The numbers will likely go even higher as more migrants from South America make their way to the U.S. southern border. Let's go out to our chief White House correspondent right now. James Rosen joins us with more on the Biden administration's plan, their changing of the plan. James, what are you hearing?
Bianca, good afternoon. We're hearing about court action, specifically the part of the Biden border policy that was halted by a judge last night, just as Title 42 was being lifted, was that Border Patrol memo that surfaced earlier this week instructing that some migrants be released into the United States without their first being enrolled in the usual tracking programs due to severe overcrowding at processing centers. Judge T. Kent Wetherell, a Trump appointee on the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Florida, issued a temporary restraining order blocking the implementation of that policy, and he set a hearing from a week from today. The judge's order came in response to an emergency motion filed by the state of Florida, a frequent destination for illegal immigrants arriving from Mexico. The southwest border has been out of control for the past 2 years, the judge wrote, and it is about to get worse. The current situation at the border, the judge continued, underscores this court's recent finding that there is an immigration crisis at the southwestern border. The evidence, the judge concluded, established that Florida suffers substantial harm, both to its sovereignty and its public fisc, when the federal government releases aliens into the country on parole or otherwise, rather than detaining them as required by the Immigration and Naturalization Act. The harm to Florida, the judge said, is irreparable because it cannot be undone through monetary remedies. Appearing at yesterday's White House press briefing, Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas, architect of the Biden border policies, refused to provide a timeline when he was asked how long the chaotic situation at the border, the very words used by President Biden himself, will last.
I have said for months and months that the challenge at the border is and is going to be very difficult. And we have spoken repeatedly about the fact that that difficulty may actually only increase at this time of transition. It is going to take a period of time for our approach to actually gain traction and show results.
Later today, President Biden welcomes to the Oval Office Pedro Sanchez, president of Spain, one of the countries where the new Biden administration's mobile app for migrants encourages them to seek asylum instead of seeking it here in the United States. John and Bianca.
James Rosen with the very latest live at the White House for us this noon. Thanks, James.
Now, as you heard in Chuck Holton's report, the White House is threatening to veto a bill that would help secure the border. The legislation was passed last night by the U.S. House of Representatives. All Republicans, except for 2, voted in favor of it. The Democrats all said no. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy responded afterwards. Here he is.
By passing H.R. 2, House Republicans have shown we're focused on addressing our nation's biggest challenges. We all knew the deadline, but the White House produced no plan, missed the deadline, and bumbled into another crisis.
Let's talk about this now and welcome in Kinney County, Texas Sheriff Brad Coe. He joins us, and so does Sheriff Roy Board from Goliad County in Texas. Gentlemen, great to have you both here.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
All right, Sheriff Boyd, first to you. You were actually with Senator Ted Cruz on the border yesterday. Let's play a clip of what he had to say.
I have to say I am angry because this is deliberate. This is a decision that was made by President Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and congressional Democrats to open up the border to what is nothing less than an invasion.
And the deliberate actions taken by this administration, Sheriff, I mean, Ted Cruz showed a video of little shoes on the border. We saw the children. We know they're being trafficked in many ways. So do you agree with the senator's assessment that this were deliberate steps taken and some of the youngest people here involved in this, they're the victims that obviously the administration isn't thinking about?
He's absolutely right. The senator is correct. I'm down here on the River Levee Road right now, and this entire road is covered with debris and litter. About 17% of the people coming across that river are unaccompanied children. These children are being trafficked by the cartel and are being placed in a dangerous situation that no free country should allow to happen. And this is all the fault of the Biden administration and their open borders policy and welcoming illegal immigration with open arms.
Sheriff Coe, one of the things, too, that we've seen, we know to be a fact, is that there's no way to monitor everyone who's coming across the border. Congressman Michael McCall is from Texas yesterday. He's also the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. This is what he said about the security concerns he has about the open southern border.
We do know we're seeing a lot of people coming in from outside this hemisphere. We do know there are hundreds that were on the terrorist watch list. That's a concern. And the fact is, those are just the people who are apprehended at the border that we know about. And, you know, when you have such a wide open situation like this, I just worry about what's coming in that we don't know about.
And that's the thing, isn't it, Sheriff Coe? We don't know who's getting through. Mike McCall was talking about suspected terrorists, but there's also murderers, rapists, other criminals who are getting across the border. Can you, as a sheriff, look your community in the eye tonight and tell them they're safe? It must be very difficult to do so, considering what you're dealing with the open border.
It is a little tough. We had a landowners meeting yesterday, and that was one of the primary concerns. How safe are they? And basically, we had to kind of stand up there and tell us what Ted Cruz told us 2 years ago. He said, we're on our own. So, yes, it's very tough to look at these landowners and the citizens in the county that we're doing the best we can with the very, very limited resources.
Yeah, you guys are working, and Governor Abbott has stepped up, and he's provided Texas National Guardsmen. This is a question I have to both of you. I'll go to you first, Sheriff Boyd, but isn't this why the Department of Homeland Security was created? So when there are times of crisis or chaos, to use the word the president has used, there would be better coordination between federal authorities and state authorities and local authorities. It does not seem that Alejandro Mayorkas or anyone from the federal level is interested in actually helping you guys out.
You're absolutely right. The Department of Homeland Security was a prime partner for us in local law enforcement, assisted us, assisted the state, helped us conduct long-term investigations on organized crime. But unfortunately, the administration has weaponized the Department of Homeland Security against the American people and against local law enforcement. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in this situation where we're being overrun with criminal activity, and we just don't have the resources to deal with it. And the Department of Homeland Security is so overwhelmed with their tasks that they can no longer provide us with the assistance we're used to.
Last word to you, Sheriff Coe.
Yeah, Department of Homeland Security right now, pretty much a joke. They're not doing what they were intended to do. They're babysitting people when they should be processing them and sending them home. And that leaves a huge burden on myself and Sheriff Boyd to try to fill in that void with the extremely lack of resources, if you know what I mean.
Well, we know what you mean, and I think a lot of America watching this right now knows exactly what you guys are mean. You guys are left to handle this on your own without the resources of the federal government at a time when you need them the most. Gentlemen, thank you for spending a few moments with us today. We know you got to get back to it and try to keep your community safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Breaking news, our other top story for you this Friday. You're looking at retired Marine Daniel Penny here as he surrendered to the New York police just a short time ago. He is expected to be arraigned in Manhattan criminal court on second-degree manslaughter charge. Penny was the man seen in this video putting a homeless man into a chokehold on a New York City subway earlier this month. Jordan Neely, that man, was later pronounced dead at a hospital. Penny's attorney said he acted in self-defense to protect himself and others on that train who were afraid. According to a freelance journalist who recorded this confrontation, Neely, who suffered from mental illness, was allegedly acting aggressively and screaming at passengers in that subway car. Joining us now with the latest from New York is our national correspondent Mike Carter. Mike, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Bianca. Well, as you just mentioned, 24-year-old veteran, Marine Corps veteran Daniel Penny says he was just simply trying to disable 30-year-old Jordan Neely by putting him in that what ultimately was a deadly chokehold after Neely and other passengers said that Neely was verbally harassing, even threatening them. As we just mentioned, Mr. Daniel Penny turned himself into police this morning here in Manhattan. He has since left that police precinct. He'll be arraigned later this afternoon here in New York City. He's expected to face a felony second-degree manslaughter charge for Jordan Neely's death. Penny restrained Neely on a Manhattan subway car back on May 1st after passengers say that Neely began harassing them, shouting at them and saying he was hungry, thirsty, and had little to live for. After passing out from a chokehold applied by Penny and with the help of other passengers to restrain him, Neely was later pronounced dead at a hospital. Important to note, though, video evidence does show that Daniel Penny placed Neely in a position to help his airflow return to his body after the chokehold was applied. Penny's attorneys say they are confident that their client will be, quote, fully absolved of any wrongdoing, saying that he, quote, risked his own life and safety for the good of his fellow passengers. The unfortunate result was the unintended and unforeseen death of Mr. Neely. Well, Jordan Neely was a homeless man with a long history of mental illness. He's been described as a former street artist and Michael Jackson impersonator, but he was also a career criminal with more than 40 prior arrests to his name. At the end of the May 1st incident, Neely had an outstanding arrest warrant for a 2021 assault of a 67-year-old woman. as she left a subway station. Well, protests over Neely's death have raged for several weeks now here in New York City, with many protesters and even Democratic politicians like AOC demanding that Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg file criminal charges against the Marine Corps vet. Last hour, the Neely family held a press conference to share their feelings.
We don't want it where you can kill someone because you thought there was a possibility they could do something to you. There was no attack. Mr. Neely did not attack anyone. He did not touch anyone. He did not hit anyone. But he was choked to death. And that can't stand.
And Bianca, I think a lot of folks here in this city who take the subway every day to work, they try to put themselves vicariously in that position of being Daniel Penny. What would you do if you were in that situation where you either had to confront a person on a train, or maybe now, depending on what happens in this case, maybe you're saying it's not even worth getting involved?
Yeah, for sure. As we know with this case, there'll be a lot more evidence, and there's a lot of witnesses there who will come out to recount what they saw. Mike Carter, thank you so much. Always great to have you in. Appreciate it.
You have every right to be outraged today and angry and never watch this network again.
Anderson Cooper apologizing to his audience for the network's town hall with former President Donald Trump. More on why Cooper is so upset ahead.
How could you do that without consulting us?
I am for a community.
How could you do that without consulting us?
I am concerned with safety in the area.
Everyone is concerned about safety. Those are the residents of South Shore, the community there in Chicago. They have filed a lawsuit to try and stop a migrant shelter being constructed at an abandoned high school in their neighborhood. Also in New York's Hudson Valley, 3 congressmen, 2 Republicans, and 1 Democrat are calling on President Biden to declare a state of emergency for New York. 2 buses full of migrants arrived yesterday, sent by New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Democrat Paul Ryan says, quote, communities were given no notice and no assistance to house these asylum seekers. According to Politico, Eric Adams is willing to house migrants in a shuttered prison. The suggestion came up yesterday in a call with officials, but the point is everyone is scrambling for longer-term solutions here. Migrants also showed up at the doorstep of Vice President Kamala Harris's home. Texas Governor Greg Abbott sending that bus to her house within less than 24 hours of the migrants arriving there. Now, unlike President Biden or any Democrats really, Senator Ted Cruz is actually at the border. He is demanding action from President Biden and Democrats.
I have to say I am angry because this is deliberate. This is a decision that was made by President Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and congressional Democrats to open up the border to what is nothing less than an invasion.
All right, the senator finding personal belongings, children's shoes scattered at the U.S. border. This was near Brownsville, Texas, just across the river in Matamoros, Mexico. Now, joining us now to talk about these backyard border wars, former acting attorney general and Newsmax analyst Matthew Whitaker. Also with us, former FBI agent and Staten Island Congressman Michael Grimm, also a combat veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps. Michael, great to see you.
Good to see you, John. Thanks for having me. Good to see you, John.
And you too. Great to see you, Matthew, as well. We saw Ted Cruz down there on the border describing the scene. You can see the shoes, Matthew, and you know, and so do you, Michael, those shoes only tell part of the story. What is happening to these children? Here's a tweet from Ted Cruz as well, talking about the horrific nature of it. Why? He also talked about the lack of attention on this from the Biden administration, and they're doing this willfully, Matthew, willfully. Why do you think they allow this to take place? They could stop it if they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the million-dollar question, John. I mean, I think you have to just assume their actions are what they want for a result. That, you know, they have been unserious about strengthening border security. They were against the wall. They got rid of the Remain in Mexico policy, got rid of the public charge policy. Really, all of the policies that worked, safe third country, where people had to register for asylum in the first country that wasn't their home country if they wanted to apply for asylum. So all those policies were undone caused this massive surge. The pressure has been building for months, if not years, and now we are here with no solution. And the administration, all they can do is go to the podium and tell us that our border is secure. It's insanity what they're doing to our country. And I have to agree with Senator Cruz. This appears to be nothing short of an invasion that should require more resources at the border than what they have currently.
It just boggles your mind, Michael, when you think about the Biden administration. We saw video from our reporter Chuck Holton. They have construction crews now feverishly trying to finish the border wall, the same border wall that the Biden administration shut down construction on as soon as they took office. We also, at the 11th hour, see the Biden administration trying to implement rules that the Trump administration tried to get through, but they're running into the same legal hurdles. The ACLU says, no, you can't do this stuff. We do have a crisis here. The president's words is chaos. Why does it seem like they are less than willing to solve the problem?
Well, John, it's actually, for me, it's fairly obvious. This is an unmitigated disaster of their own doing, and you keep asking why. Well, it's because Joe Biden, to get elected, had to sell out. He had to sit down with the most radical of groups, which includes those lunatics that believe in open borders and that we should be taking in, the poor of all countries that can get here. So he sold out and made promises to them and then implemented what they wanted, which was an open border policy. The problem now is, unfortunately for the president, the rest of the Democrat Party is saying, wait a minute, this is out of control. You can't just placate to these small radical groups. What about us? Because now our constituents in these big cities, like you just heard in Chicago, did those women that were complaining, did they look like MAGA Republicans to you? Because they didn't to me.
No.
These are hardcore Democrats that are saying, wait, here in Chicago, here in New York City, here in LA, here in all major cities, we can't take this. And now they're draining our resources. So it's finally hitting home for the Democrats. And that's why Joe Biden is between a rock and a hard place.
I also want to ask you both, while I have you here, about Daniel Penny, the Marine who turned himself in today, now facing charges. Alvin Bragg has refused to prosecute a lot of people for violent crimes. This is the one, Matthew, that he chooses to prosecute here. And a lot of people say the only reason is because you have a white suspect in this crime, alleged crime, and a black victim. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, Alvin Bragg, really is a pathetic excuse for a prosecutor. I mean, he has taken these high-profile cases to get him attention that don't encourage or extend the rule of law. I mean, in this case, obviously, the facts and circumstances are going to dramatically matter as to what happened and what this gentleman was thinking when this event transacted. And we're just going to have to let the process play out. But your point is well made, and that is that Alvin Bragg has focused his resources on these politically divisive cases, whether it's Donald Trump or whether it's this case, and really ignored the many needs of his community, including violent crime, all the way down to simple stealing from pharmacies. I mean, it's insane where his priorities are.
Can Daniel Penny get a fair trial, Michael Grimm, in Manhattan?
Probably not. Unfortunately, Manhattan is, a liberal bastion. And I would say this, listen, Alvin Bragg is two things. Number one, he's a bit of a political hack that has political aspirations. So he's placating to his left base. That's number one. The other thing is he's a civil rights activist. He's not a prosecutor. He's an advocate. And he advocates for the criminals most of the time. He ran on an entire platform of decriminalization to make sure that less people went to jail and less people were charged with felonies. He's cherry picking these cases because he believes it will help his political career. This is an absolute travesty. As a United States Marine, I feel for this Marine that did what I think most Marines would do if they felt themselves and those around them were in danger. He protected those that were in danger. That's what he did.
Yeah, there'll be a lot less of Good Samaritan stepping forth if this case does wind up with Daniel Penny spending 15 years in prison, which is what he's facing right now. Great to see you both, Matthew Whitaker and Michael Grimm.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
All right, guys, still ahead this hour, Elon Musk has a new CEO at Twitter, just officially announced. He tweeted it out about 30 minutes ago. We'll talk about who this was, Yakarina's past and Twitter's future. Christina.
Well, the CEO, Elon Musk right now, the current one, just announced the news in true Twitter form, of course, on the platform itself, officially confirming the advertising exec from NBC Universal, Linda Yaccarino, as the new top exec at the company. Writing, I am excited to welcome Linda Yaccarino as the new CEO of Twitter. Linda will focus primarily on business operations while I focus on product designing and new technology. Looking forward to working with her to transform this platform into X, the everything app. Now, this news comes months after he first announced plans to back away from the company, which he renamed X Corp. But Musk didn't go out without some drama because he kept the identity of the new female head a secret until about an hour ago. But there was a lot of speculation. Nothing, of course, as we know, gets past the Twitterverse. They were quickly able to figure it out, especially once the rumor really picked up and Yaccarino resigned from her position as head of advertising at NBC Universal. Not everyone is thrilled with this choice, though. According to her LinkedIn profile, Yaccarino has some strong ties to the World Economic Forum. She currently serves as executive chair of the Task Force of Future Work and was formerly the chairman of the Ad Council. But her background in advertising, I think, does tell us that Twitter is looking for someone to bring in more money on that sector of the company. John?
Yeah, she sounds like she has a very established resume, and you got to put your faith and trust. Elon Musk is either a god one day or a dog the next day, and you can never make the Twitterverse happy.
I mean, going back though to the Twitterverse, just nothing gets past them. Someone found the receipts of when Elon Musk sent out a tweet about the World Economic Forum saying that it's a government that nobody wanted and no one voted for, and then making a joke about how they brought in someone from it.
Well, maybe they should just give her a couple weeks to figure it out, and then we'll report back and see what happens. Good to see you, Christina. All right. Still
You have expressed deep anger and disappointment. Many of you are upset that someone who attempted to destroy our democracy was invited to sit on a stage in front of a crowd of Republican voters to answer questions. You have every right to be outraged today and angry and never watch this network again.
Oh, Anderson Cooper on CNN last night, clutching his pearls, attempting to do, I guess, damage control following former President Donald Trump's town hall, which he basically owned the network there. Maybe it's because articles like this one, Washington Post writing that CNN leadership is actually under fire now after all the backlash raised questions about the future of its chief executive, Chris Lick, and larger challenges facing the news media going into the 2024 election. Let's talk about this and also the new Twitter CEO. So much to get to. Let's bring in former California Assemblyman Mike Gatto, publicist at the King's firm, Gillian Anderson, and Ari Hoffman, radio host and West Coast editor of the Post Millennial. Guys, it's good to see all of you on a Friday.
Great to see you. Thank you.
So we have Trump reaction after this town hall. Ari, I'm not really buying that Anderson Cooper wants people to turn off CNN. It just sort of is a strange, I think, kind of try to settle the backlash. And, they still don't want to admit how good he was.
No, they're trying to have their cake and eat it, too. Their ratings went through the roof. They haven't seen ratings like this since Trump left the Oval Office, and they're desperate to have him back. So what was it, the day before? They're calling him a threat to democracy and how awful he is and how he's a predator and everything else, you name it. And then it's like, oh, well, we're having this massive town hall forum for him, even though he's such a threat to democracy. And then their ratings go through the roof, and they manage to alienate their own base. But they did exactly what they should have done, which was if you're having a Republican primary event, you have Republican voters there. Why would you have Democrat voters come to a Republican primary event? And conversely, if you're having a Democratic primary, why would you have Republican voters come to that? In a general election, you could have a mixed crowd when you have the two facing off against each other. But it's clear that Donald Trump and CNN both won the night because CNN hasn't seen ratings that high in forever, and Donald Trump completely wiped the floor with their moderator.
Well, listen, there's a lot to get to, so I'm not trying to cut you off, but I want to keep it pithy here because, Mike, you are our Democrat on the panel, and we know that a lot of people say that Trump was so good. In fact, Dan Bongino is quoted saying, I'm going to say after last night, I don't know what you guys think. The primary is over. Give us your thoughts. I know you watched the town hall, Mike. What were your takeaways?
Well, first of all, I can't wait to moderate or help moderate the Newsmax town hall with the Democratic candidates. I think that would be very interesting.
Oh, is Biden going to come on?
Let's try to get him. Let's try to get him and anybody else who might want to run, including the governors of certain states. But I think that, Trump is a creature of the media. The media feeds on him. It's no surprise that CNN had him on. They love Donald Trump. But I would say this, I've said this before, you know, the Republican Party, just like I'm a California Democrat, and I have to work very hard